Not too long ago, the 2019 Goodreads Choice Awards came out, and I had told myself that when they did come out, I would somehow incorporate the books that won in the various categories into my 2020 reading year. Full disclosure, I actually filmed a whole video before I'm filming this video about the Goodreads Choice Awards, and honestly, that video just got really complicated, and so I decided to just scrap the whole idea. Basically, what I was going to do is I had chosen 12 categories from the 20 categories of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I was going to read one book, the winning book, from each of those categories each month next year. So 12 categories, 12 books, 12 months kind of thing. It got really complicated because a lot of the books that won were either, the second or third book in a series, they were books that I had read before, or they were books that I just wasn't really comfortable with reading. And so what actually happened with a lot of the categories was that I ended up saying, I'll read the runner-up, or I'll read the third book. And it just got really complicated. So what I decided to do was just refilm the idea. I'm still going to be using the 12 categories that I chose, and instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow myself to look at the top 3 winners and choose to read one of those top 3. I think this will be good because then I don't have to force myself to read something that I'm really not interested in. I at least have a little bit more choice. So before I get into the top 3 winners of each category, I have to let you guys know which 12 categories I chose. I did base these off of the 2018 categories, and there's actually one category that I chose that isn't in the 2019 Goodreads Choice Awards, and that is the Best of the Best category. I have a feeling that the Best of the Best category is just the best of the Goodreads Choice Awards, so it's a category that maybe will still come out in 2019, but is being voted upon by a panel of judges or something right now. I don't know. If you guys know anything about that, do let me know. For that one, I think I'm just going to use that 12th category as kind of a freebie, and I'll just look at all of the books in the categories that I hadn't chosen and choose a book from there. So the categories that I chose are as follows. We've got fiction, historical fiction, fantasy, science fiction, nonfiction, memoir and autobiography, science and technology, graphic novels and comics, debut author, YA fiction, and YA fantasy. And then, of course, the 12th one is just a freebie. Let's get into looking at the top 3 winners of the different categories that I chose. Let's take a look at the fiction category. So the winner of the fiction category is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I feel like I don't even have to look at the second and third winners in this category because I already really want to read The Handmaid's Tale in 2020, but let's give them a shout out anyways. The second place winner in fiction is Normal People, a novel by Sally Rooney. And the third place winner is Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy van der Aa. I don't really know what the other 2 books are about, but I do know that I really want to read The Handmaid's Tale in 2020, so I am going to go with the first place winner, The Testaments, and just read the first book in the series by Margaret Atwood instead. Hey guys, editing Nicole here. So I cannot find the footage for the historical fiction category. I'm sure that I filmed it, but I can't find the footage, so I'm just going to lead you guys through the category right now. So the winner for the historical fiction category was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I already tried reading this book once. I got about 20% of the way through it, and I just hated it. I could not get through it. So needless to say, I am not going to be picking that up again. The second place winner is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, and initially I thought this is what I was going to read in this category, but I went on to do a little bit more research about it, and as it turns out, there's some stuff in there that I'm not super comfortable reading about from what I can gather from the synopsis, so I'm going to pass on that one, and I'm going to read the third place winner, and that is The Huntress by Kate Quinn. Now, as far as I know, this is a book that takes place after World War II, and it's about an English journalist, I think, and a Russian pilot, I believe that's what it is. And they're basically looking for a Nazi war criminal after the war. So that's what I'm going to be reading, and that's it for this category. The next category that we've got here is fantasy. And for fantasy, the first place winner was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This one sounds like a really, really interesting book. Apparently it has something to do with Yale University and secret societies, and there's maybe a murder at some point. I don't know, sounds mysterious. So that one is the winner. I have, however, heard that there are some warnings for content in there that may not be something I'm really interested in reading, so I'm going to put that one as kind of a maybe, except for the fact that I see that the second place winner is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is a book that I really, really want to read. This is the same author as The Night Circus. All I remember from reading The Night Circus was the amazing imagery and like very poetic writing that she had, and I absolutely loved all of that imagery that I got from that book, so I'm very, very interested in The Starless Sea. I believe it has something to do with a graduate student who stumbles upon a book, and in that book he finds out that some of his own personal history has been written, and he needs to go out into the world and figure out why his personal history has been recorded into this book, and it seems like he almost maybe slips into another world or another version of his world while this is going on. So it sounds really intriguing, and I think that's probably the one that I'm going to be reading from this category. However, we must also mention our third place winner, which is Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. He is, of course, the author of The Game of Thrones. I have not read A Game of Thrones yet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be quite honest. Sounds interesting, but it's just not really my fandom, so I'm going to pass on that one as well. And I'm going to read The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Next up, we've got the science fiction category, and we've got some really interesting frontrunners here. For our first place book, we've got Recursion by Blake Crouch. Apparently, Recursion is about some kind of a disease or affliction that you can catch in this world where people suffer from false memories of a life that they never actually led. The main character is trying to figure this whole affliction out, and there's also a scientist who wants to come up with some kind of technology where you can protect your precious memories or your true memories or something like that. It sounds really, really random, to be quite honest, but it sounds super cool at the same time. So I think Recursion by Blake Crouch is definitely something that I'm interested in reading. The second place winner is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I know nothing about this, but I do know that it is book 5 in a series, so I'm gonna have to say maybe later I'll look into the series. And then the third place winner was Gideon the Ninth. I don't even know if it can be classified as a sci-fi, to be quite honest. Like, when I was reading the synopsis, it seems like it's very much so just a fantasy set in space, but I guess the fact that it's set in space makes it sci-fi. So basically it sounds like you've got this world full of skeletons and necromancers and sort of like dark fantasy type figures. This individual, Gideon, she wants to escape her life of servitude, and it's about her journey in doing that and like breaking out from servitude. It does sound pretty cool, but to be honest, it's not really my vibe. I think I'm much more interested in something like Recursion by Blake Crouch, where it's a little bit more like sci-fi science-y. I think that'll be really cool. Next up, we have got the nonfiction category, and this one, I pretty much am just going to go with the number one winner, and that's because I have this book actually on hold for my library right now, and I'm going to be getting it in the next few weeks, so it would be the perfect book to read maybe in January or February for this challenge, and that is Girl Stop Apologizing by Rachel Hollis. I also want to read this because my friend read it and she said that it was really, really good and really inspiring. As far as I know, it is a book about just kind of empowering yourself and believing that you can have confidence and make things happen for yourself. But I feel we should also mention the second and third place winners here, and those are Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, I believe. That's really hard to read, wow. And then the third place winner is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. I'm sure those books are great. For this category, I'm going to go with Girl Stop Apologizing, the number one winner, just because I have it on hold already. All right, so now we are at the memoir and autobiographies category, and this one is really tough. I just spent some time looking at the top 3 winners, and all 3 of them sound really, really amazing. So the first place winner was Over the Top by Jonathan Von Ness. Now, I believe Jonathan Von Ness is an actor from the show Queer Eye. For right now, I think I'm going to pass on Over the Top because I just don't really know who that is right now. But in the future, if I do watch the show and kind of get to know who that is, then I'm sure I would love to pick this up. The second choice, or the second place winner for this category, is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, I believe. This is a book by the young lady who was sexually assaulted by Brock Turner. This was a huge case that I'm sure many, many people out there have heard of. And this is basically her telling her story and her perspective on things. And it sounds real heavy, guys. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit afraid to pick up a book like this. I can definitely see that it's got its importance, and I can definitely see that maybe sometime in the future I would be interested in picking this up, but for the way that I'm feeling about it, reading the synopsis right now, I'm not super comfortable with picking it up right now. So I am going to pass on Know My Name by Chanel Miller. That leaves me with the third choice, and that is Homework by Julie Andrews with Emma Walton Hamilton. I just want to know a little bit more about her life. I think that would be really cool. Apparently this is her second memoir. She's got another one called Home, so maybe I will check that one out as well. But apparently this one specifically goes through her time in Hollywood when she was working on Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, so that's very interesting to me. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Homework by Julie Andrews. Moving on, we are in the Science and Technology category, arguably the category that I was most excited for, and arguably the category that I was the most disappointed in. I don't know why, but I had this immediate negative feeling about it, and I was like, I guess I had my favorites that I was rooting for and they didn't win, and so I was like, oh, why did that have to win? And I felt like I was just very judgmental of this book right off the bat, but I have no reason to be. This book could be incredible for all I know. Let's go through the top 3 winners for this category. First place winner is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. Apparently this is a book that is written by a coroner, so somebody who works with the dead. It's supposed to be a book answering questions that people are too afraid to ask about death. On one hand, it sounds really interesting to me, especially since when I was in school, I took an anthropology course all about death and decay. It was kind of like a forensic anthropology class, and I found it really interesting. So I should be interested in this. But I guess I was just hoping that a book that felt a little bit more technical in its description would win, because when I go to science and technology, that's usually what I go for, is something that's either more technical or something that focuses on the human side of science. Second place winner is Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, and this is by Caroline Criado Perez. And that sounds really cool, honestly, just from the title. And then I went and I looked at the summary of the book, and it seems to be exactly what it sounds like. This is a book that basically goes through all of the things in our world today that are biased towards men in some way. So I'm actually very interested to look at that. It has everything to do with policy and medical research to technology, workplaces, urban planning, and the media. Invisible Women reveals biased data that excludes women. The third place winner is also something to consider, and that is The Body by Bill Bryson. And I honestly think out of these 3 books, I will be reading Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. It's slightly different than something that I might normally pick up, but it also satiates that desire for something that feels very technical. I don't know. It sounds like a book I'm really going to enjoy. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so I was just looking at the next category, and oh my gosh, so much cuteness in this category. Getting into the next category, we've got graphic novels and comics, and for our number 1 first place winner, we've got Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, and I believe the illustrator is Faith Erin Hicks. Pumpkinheads apparently is about this guy and this girl who work at this seasonal pumpkin patch, and they've always done this throughout all of high school, and now it's their last year working there, it's their last shift together, and they decide that they're going to make it a night to remember kind of thing. That sounds so cute. I also really, really love the art style, and quite honestly, the art style is something that's making me really want to read this, so that is definitely a huge contender for me. The second place winner is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is volume 2, and I don't know who the illustrator is. I don't know if it is Alice Oseman or not. So it says that Heartstopper is boy meets boy, boys become friends, Boys Fall in Love, an LGBTQ plus graphic novel about life, love, and everything that happens in between, which just sounds really sweet. Going on to read some more of the synopsis, it seems like these boys are friends and maybe they like each other, but they're not sure, so it's kind of like a friendship versus more than friends kind of thing. That's what it sounds like. I don't know if that's what it is. I really want to read this too. I don't know which one I'm going to choose. Ugh, this is really hard. And then the third place winner is the graphic novel version of The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I would be interested in picking up, but I think I'm going to read the novel first. And it is between Pumpkinheads and Heartstopper, and I really want to read both, but if I had to choose one, I think The art style of Pumpkinheads just really makes me want to read it. So the winner for this category for me is the number one winner, and that is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks. We are into our next category, which is debut novel. And I've already read the first place winner, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I believe she also won in the romance category with this book, and having read the book, I think that it was great, especially for a debut novel. I think it was fantastic, so good for you, Casey McQuiston. Congratulations. But because I've already read it, I'm not going to be reading it. So the second and third place winners are my options. The second place winner in debut novel is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, or Michaelides. Michaelides sounds like a Greek philosopher. So The Silent Patient, I've heard of this. I don't quite remember exactly what it's about. Hold on, give me a second. Okay, so The Silent Patient. A lady shoots her husband in the face 5 times and then never speaks about it again. And she's been taken into a forensic unit and she's being held there. And basically there is a criminal psychotherapist who is trying to get to know her and talk to her and get her story out. It says that maybe he's getting a little bit too consumed and motivated to find out her story. It sounds really interesting. It takes place in London, which already love that. Love things taking place in London, England. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good contender for me. Third place winner is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyen Khan. I hope I said that right. That's a really, really cool name. Oyen Khan Brothwaite. That's a really cool name. I really like that name. I believe I've heard of this before, and this is a story where there are sisters. One of them is a serial killer, as the title suggests, and the other sister always kind of comes to her rescue and helps her hide the bodies and like clean up and stuff. But then something happens where the one serial killing sister wants to go after somebody that the non-serial killer sister cares about. I think that's what's going on here. The non-serial killer sister is now in a spot where she has to decide if she wants to help her sister or help the person she cares about. I believe that's what's going on here. Sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound as interesting as The Silent Patient. I don't know, The Silent Patient feels like a psychological thriller to me. I think for the sake of this video, I'm going to choose The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Alright, so the next category we are getting into is YA fiction. I've actually only got 2 choices in this category because I already read the number 2 spot, which is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Highly recommend. It was a great book. I read it back in February, but that leaves me with 2 other options. That is the first place option, which is 5 Feet Apart by Rachael I'm not sure, Lippincott, with contributors Mickey Daughtry and Tobias Laconis. And I believe this is a story about 2 teens who fall in love, but they can't get close to each other because they both have cystic fibrosis, I believe, and if they get too close to one another, they could potentially make each other very, very sick. It sounds extremely tragic. It sounds so sad. Typically not the kind of book I would pick up, like a contemporary romance tragedy is what it sounds like. I don't know. So the next book that we have to choose from is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. So this is a book that is written in prose, apparently, and it follows a girl who basically she got pregnant when she was in her freshman year, and she now is starting to think about graduation and what she's going to do after graduation, and it kind of seems like she's struggling with the idea of focusing on her life kind of as it is now, like taking care of her child. And she's struggling with that and the idea of kind of breaking out a little bit and following her dreams of becoming a chef because she has this love of cooking. It sounds like this is going to be a very like reflective, beautiful kind of book. But honestly, if I had to choose, I think I'm going to go with 5 Feet Apart, just because neither of these books are really something that I would typically pick up, but I'm a little bit more intrigued by the kind of cutesy love story aspect of 5 Feet Apart. Now we are into YA fantasy and science fiction. Cool. And it appears that our first, second, and third place winners are all sequels. So that's interesting. But just looking at these three, I don't think they really need too much explanation. I think everyone's probably heard a lot about these. Our first place winner is The Wicked King by Holly Black. Our second place winner is Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. And our third place winner is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. So I know I'm not going to choose the Cassandra Clare book because I've looked into the Dark Artifices universe and it's not really something I'm super interested in reading right now, so I'm going to get rid of that one right away. And then we're down to The Wicked King and Wayward Son. Both of these I would be reading the first book in the series because I've not started these series. And I think I'm going to go with The Wicked King. So I'm going to be reading The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. And that's purely because I'm pretty sure I had that book on hold for my library, actually. I've definitely had an interest in it in the past, and I'm going to follow up on that interest. Alrighty then. So we have chosen 11 books for me to be reading in 2020. We need to choose a 12th, and the 12th book is going to be chosen from a category that we have not already chosen a book from. So our options are mystery and thriller, romance, horror, humor, history and biography, food and cookbooks, poetry, middle grade and children's, and picture books. So, right off the bat, I'm going to X out picture books, I'm going to X out middle grade and children's, I'm going to X out food and cookbooks, and I think I'm also going to X out poetry. Just not something I'm super interested in. So that leaves us with history, biography, horror, humor, and mystery thriller. And I think I know which book I'm going to go with. To my own complete surprise, I think I'm going to go with the horror category. The reason why I want to do this is because the winner of the horror category is The Institute by Stephen King. And I've never read a Stephen King. I am typically very kind of weak when it comes to horror. I don't want to be scared. But I have this kind of like personal goal to read at least one Stephen King book in my life. And to be quite honest, The Institute sounds interesting. So the synopsis for The Institute, it says, in the middle of the night in a house on a quiet street in suburban Minneapolis, intruders silently murder Luke Ellis's parents and load him into a black SUV. Luke will wake up at the Institute in a room that looks just like his own, except there's no window. And outside his door are other doors, behind which are other kids with special talents, telekinesis and telepathy, who got to this place the same way Luke did. So basically, The Institute by Stephen King, having read the synopsis, it gives me vibes of Middle Game by Seanan McGuire mixed with like Stranger Things kind of a thing. If you haven't read Middle Game by Seanan McGuire, you definitely should do that. But this is definitely giving me Middle Game vibes, and I loved Middle Game. So I think that's probably why I'm super interested in this. And then it's also giving me slightly like, I don't know why I'm getting Stranger Things vibes, probably just because it's like creepy and there's kids, but I really enjoyed Stranger Things. So this seems like a book that if I'm going to enjoy any Stephen King book, it'll probably be this one. So I'm going to be reading The Institute by Stephen King as my 12th book for the Goodreads 2019 Choice Awards Challenge that I am giving myself in 2020. That was really weird. I don't know why I did that. That is it, guys. Those are the 12 books that I'm going to be challenging myself to read in 2020. I'm hoping to average one book per month. Let me know what you think about any of these books in the comments below if you have read some of them. But anyways, guys, that is everything I've got for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, do consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video so that you guys can see more of my 12 Days of Bookmas videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!